Hey there, welcome to FFBC for Kids. This is our Back to Sunday School series. Let's get started. It's been a while since we did a video in our Back to Sunday School series, so we figured that we'd better do a quick review episode today. So sit back and relax as Old Testament man takes us through the story that we've covered so far. But pay close attention, because after the videos are done, Pastor Daniel will have some questions for you, and you could win a prize if you can get them all right. Keep watching.
The Bible starts by telling us that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He created everything there is, the light, the waters, the land, the trees, the birds and fish, the animals, and lastly, the people. God's creation was good, but then mankind sinned and creation became corrupt. God had a plan, though, and his plan involved a man named Abraham. God chose Abraham to be the father of God's chosen nation of people, Israel. God promised that Abraham's descendants would inherit a beautiful land and would prosper and bless the world. The Israelite people ended up in Egypt first. There, the Egyptians made the Israelites their slaves and treated them poorly. God chose a man named Moses to deliver the Israelites out of Egypt. Once God had brought them out of Egypt in the Exodus, the Israelites were given God's law as instructions for how they needed to live as God's people. Then they were all ready to enter the good land that God had promised Abraham. But they got too scared of the people who were living in the land God had promised them. Even though they had God on their sides, they chickened out. So God decided that not one of those who had decided not to trust him would get to go into the land, and made the Israelites wait until a whole new generation had grown up before they could go in. This is where the book of Deuteronomy happens. Moses is still leading the Israelites in this book, and they are now ready to enter the promised land. But before they could enter, Moses gave a big sermon, way bigger than the ones the pastor gives on Sunday morning. Oi! This sermon was instructions for the Israelites going into the promised land so that they didn't make the same mistakes as their mothers and fathers did. They wrote down the sermon and they called it Deuteronomy. There once was a man who did not exist. No, wait, that can't be right. Let me read that again. There once was a man whose name was None. Right? But hold on. If his name was None, he didn't have a name? None? No name? That was his name? Oh, I'm so confused. Okay, I guess I better just read the script. Maybe it'll make more sense as I go along. There once was a man whose name was None. That was his name. It's not that he had none name. His name was None. Okay, confusing, but okay. None had a son. Oh, now it's a rhyming story. None had a son whose name was Joshua. And since Joshua's dad was a man named None, that made Joshua the son of None. What? Who is writing this script? He was the son of None? That's so ridiculous. Son of None. Ha! Sounds like he has no dad, but his dad's name is None. My dad's name is Ebenezer, so they can call me the son of Ebenezer, but they call him the son of None, and it sounds like he came from nowhere. Where was I again? Oh, yes, Joshua was the son of None. As he grew up amongst the Israelite nation in the wilderness, God chose Joshua to be Moses' assistant, a very important job. And Joshua was one of the 12 men who went to spy on Canaan, the promised land, before the Israelites went in. Joshua and Caleb were the only 2 men who had faith in God that he would defeat the people of the land, and so God said Joshua and Caleb would get to enter the promised land even though all the other Israelites were too scared. Eventually, after Moses had shared the book of Deuteronomy with all the people of Israel, it came time for the people of Israel to enter the promised land. But Moses was not allowed. God chose Joshua to lead the people of Israel after Moses was gone. Moses went up onto a mountain and God showed him the promised land, and then Moses died. The people of Israel mourned for Moses, but they followed Joshua because God was with him. There once was a man named Joshua,
son of Nun.
Oh, not this again. Joshua,
son of Nun,
was the leader of the Israelites who were going to enter the land God had promised to them. So Joshua,
son of Nun,
sent 2 spies
sneaky
across the Jordan River to sneak into Jericho
big wow
and see what they could see. When the spies
sneaky
got to Jericho,
big wow
they entered the house of a woman named Rahab,
full of faith.
The king of Jericho
big wow
heard about the spies,
sneaky
so he sent some soldiers
hoorah
to Rahab's
full of faith
house to arrest them. The soldiers
hoorah
asked Rahab
full of faith
where the spies
sneaky
that had visited her were, and she told the soldiers
hoorah
that the spies
sneaky
had left and gone out the gate of Jericho
big wow
into the countryside. So the soldiers
hoorah
rushed off to catch them. But Rahab
full of faith
had actually hidden the spies
sneaky
on the roof of her house under some stalks of flax. The spies
sneaky
thanked Rahab
full of faith
for helping them. Rahab
full of faith
told them that everyone in Jericho
big wow
had heard about the Israelites and how God was with them in their battles and had helped them cross the Red Sea. Everyone in Jericho
big wow
was terrified of them because of it. Rahab
full of faith
asked the spies
sneaky
if they would save her and her family from the destruction of Jericho,
big wow
because she had saved them from the soldiers.
hoorah
The spies
sneaky
promised that Rahab
full of faith
and her family would be saved if she hung a scarlet cord from her window. Then Rahab
full of faith
let the spies
sneaky
out of Jericho
big wow
on a rope, and they hid in the hills for 3 days from the soldiers
hoorah
who were searching for them before heading back to Joshua.
son of Nun
When Joshua
son of Nun
and the Israelites heard what the spies
sneaky
said about how scared everyone in Jericho
big wow
was and about Rahab's
full of
faith, they all were encouraged. There once was a nation named Israel. Israel was about to enter the land that was promised to them by God. They had sent spies in to scout out the land and knew that the armies living there were afraid of them. But there was one big problem. Actually, the problem was that there was one big river. The Jordan River was between the Israelites and the Promised Land. It was a great, big, wide river, especially at the time of year that the Israelites needed to cross. It had overflowed its banks and had a mighty current. There was no way all the Israelites could get across it with all their children and animals and belongings. But God had a plan. He told Joshua, the Israelites' leader, to get the priests of God to carry the Ark of the Covenant, the symbol of God's presence with his people, and walk into the river. It sounds like a crazy plan. Wouldn't that mean the priests and the Ark of the Covenant would get swept away? God promised that he would hold back the waters just like he did for the Israelites at the Red Sea. So the priests took the Ark of the Covenant and walked ahead of the people of Israel towards the Jordan River. As soon as their feet touched the river, the waters all piled up and the riverbed was safe to walk across. All the Israelites and their children and their animals and their belongings crossed the river on dry ground into the Promised Land. The Israelites had just crossed over the Jordan River and were now camped outside the city of Jericho. After Joshua got instructions from the commander of the Lord's army, yada yada yada, let's get to the battle. The Israelites were ready for war. So they got their swords, they got their shields, they got their spears. Wait a minute, that's not what it says. They got their trumpets and priests. Well, that's a weird strategy, but okay. So the priests blew their trumpets and took the Ark of the Covenant, and the army walked ahead and behind them, and they marched towards Jericho. When they got there, they prepared for the attack. They marched around the city and went back to camp? Hold on, what? They didn't even fight? I thought this was a story of great victory and triumph. All they did was walk. Maybe it was an intimidation tactic, and the next day they attacked. Yes, they went to sleep, and the next day they were going to attack. On the second day, the Israelite army got up and got ready for battle. It says in the Bible that they did the exact same thing as the day before. Huh? They marched around the city and went back to camp. Oi, what does a narrator have to do to get a battle scene around here? On the third day, the Israelites marched around Jericho and went back to their camp. Isn't that just typical? On the fourth day, the Israelites marched around Jericho and went back to their camp. Oh, surprise, surprise. On the fifth day, the Israelites marched around Jericho and went back to their camp. Oh, this is getting repetitive. On the sixth day, the Israelites marched around Jericho and went back to their camp. On the seventh day, the Israelites marched around Jericho seven times? That's new. After the seventh time, Joshua commanded the priests to play a loud blast on the trumpet, and the people to shout as loud as they could. As soon as they did, the walls of Jericho came tumbling down, and the Israelites charged into the city. Wow! The Israelites defeated Jericho entirely. Not a person was left except for Rahab and her family, who God saved from the destruction of the city. The end.
All right, I hope that you've been paying really close attention during the first 7 Back to Sunday School videos and now during today's review video. If you've been paying really close attention, then you might just be able to answer my 10 questions and win yourself a prize. Let me tell you how it's all going to work. In just a moment, I'm going to put 10 questions here on the screen, and if you can figure out the answers to all of them, then you should send me an email to the email address that's on the bottom of the screen. You can get your mom or dad to help you. And if you have all the answers to the questions, you send me an email, then you will win the prize. Feel free to re-watch any of the old videos if you have to in order to find the answers. If you don't remember, that's not cheating or anything like that. And you should work together with your brothers or sisters and maybe even get your parents to give you a few hints if you need them in order to get all of the answers. For the parents, feel free to help a little bit, but try and make sure that they are the ones who get the answers in the end. And when you send me an email with their answers, then also let me know how many of your kids have earned the prize in your household, and send me your mailing address too, so that I can mail you the prize and get that to you. Sound good? Okay, here are the 10 questions. Number 1. Which 2 books of the Bible have we studied so far in our Back to Sunday School videos? Number 2, in the first Back to Sunday School video, we learned that God blank obedience, that we shouldn't have any blank in our hearts, and that God is blank of our praise. Question number 3. Which Old Testament story that we watched in a Back to Sunday School video was not in today's review video? Question number 4. What 3 things should we love God with all of, according to the Back to Sunday School video on Deuteronomy 6, 4-9? Number 5. In the video on Deuteronomy 28, we learned that obedience equals blank and disobedience equals blank. Number 6, what 3 things did God give Joshua and us so that he could be strong and courageous? Number 7, God saved Rahab because of her what? A, good deeds, B, faith, or C, money? 8, in the video about Joshua 3, 4, and 5, God brought the Israelites across which river? And what other Old Testament story of salvation does that remind us of? Number 9, we need to follow Joshua's example from the video on Joshua 6 of getting our blank from God, living in blank to God, and then we blank on God's Holy Spirit for the victory in our lives. And number 10, which 2 special events did we pause our Back to Sunday School series for? Okay, hopefully you were able to either write down all 10 of those questions or pause the video and get a screenshot so that you can get all the answers that you need. Once you and your brothers and sisters and parents have gotten all the answers ready, make sure to send that email to that email address there, and with your address and with how many of you were getting the answers, and then you will earn yourself a prize. I hope that you're able to do that. That's your activity for today, is to go and get the answers to those 10 questions. Thanks for watching FFBC for Kids. We hope that you've enjoyed this little review episode. And next week, we're going to be moving on to the story just after Joshua at the walls of Jericho. Hope to see you then.